Almost. Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we try to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Vokey.
And I'm Heidi Subnani. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited today to speak with some friends of ours, Tim and Melissa, who are going to be here talking about how to grade in the building thinking classroom. And we know that many of you are experimenting or using building thinking classroom ideas in your math work, or sometimes in some cases in your science or ELA or social studies work. And so
it's spreading in my schools.
Yeah. So we are really excited to have you here. Feel free to follow along either on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And you can subscribe if you like, and you will always be able to know when we have a brand new guest who is here and sharing with us some really great free right in your home professional development. So we hope you will follow along.
Yes. So our guests today are going to be talking about grading in the thinking classroom, as Heidi said, and we are going to welcome Melisa McCain and Tim Brzezinski to talk to us. So let me tell you about them. So Melisa McCain is an instructional coach at Franklin Community Schools in Franklin, Indiana. Her home base is at the high school, where she collaborates with teachers of all content areas to provide high-quality instruction along with a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all students. In addition, Melisa works closely with teachers throughout the district at all levels to promote and model conceptual learning in mathematics. Melisa loves her position as an instructional coach and feels that what was most prepared her for this position is a wide range of experience she's encountered in her almost 30 years of education. During those years, Melisa has held positions not only as an instructional coach, but also early childhood education director, special education teacher, elementary classroom teacher, elementary media specialist. This is a long list, people. High school media specialist, district-wide technology specialist, data coach, innovations director, and most recently, interim assistant principal. So this girl is busy. And Tim Brzezinski is a full-time mathematics teacher at Engineering and Science University Magnet School in New Haven, Connecticut, and a part of Independent Mathematics Education Consultant. He is a GeoGebra ambassador, a certified GeoGebra presenter and author, and also served as GeoGebra's former professional development director. He is also a former full-time high school mathematics teacher and a part-time mathematics instructor in Central Connecticut State University. In his day-to-day work, Mr. Brzezinski enjoys empowering students to actively engage, explore, discover, and learn mathematics, and he also enjoys empowering other teachers to do the same. In his consulting work, Tim facilitates active and engaging professional development workshops for mathematics teachers and administrators worldwide. So let's bring them in. Hello.
Hello.
Good to be back with you guys.
Yes, we're really excited about this because I will tell you I am 100% immersed in BTC and the work that I'm doing right now. So I'm anxious to talk to you guys about everything BTC, but I know we're going to focus on grading today. So
we love to start with this question. It lets people know a little bit more about you beyond your biography information that we share in a professional sense. So Melissa, I'll start with you. Could you tell us, what is your math story?
Well, I've shared a little bit of it in other instances, and I'll start by saying, like, I did not grow up in the healthiest environment and do not have the best early education memories of school. And so a lot of that was affected by the environment that I grew up with. But one of the things that I realized pretty quickly is, and this is another thing I've said before, is like, I'm an overthinker, and I think I have been for forever. My husband got me a shirt that says, "Please stop while I overthink this." And that's always kind of been innate. And even at a younger age, like I would look and it was pretty clear, like there was a group of smart kids And then there was the group of kids that I was in, and they were two separate things. And so I spent a lot of time maybe overthinking, like, what do I need to do to get in that group? And I think I pretty early came across that what I needed to do to get in that group is get good grades. And the way that I needed to get good grades was to memorize, because back then a lot of it was like we had days where we had to recite poems. So you spent your week memorizing a poem that you would recite to class for a grade, or obviously those times tables that you would have to do them so quickly. And so you'd have to have them memorized, and someone would sit there with you, or even spelling tests. And so the other thing I realized is I'm not a memorizer. Like, the harder I try to memorize something, the less I'm going to memorize of it. Is just, I am not a memorizer. And just even that thought of the speed and having to do something quickly without having the time to think through and process, like, that just makes my whole anxiety go up. So not being a memorizer, but definitely being a problem solver, I quickly tried to figure out how to get the grades without memorizing. And embarrassingly, probably like many students, my problem was solved by cheating, and I was really good at it. So, like, spelling tests, I knew the routine that on Friday she was going to have us pull out a piece of loose leaf paper and number it 1 to 10, and she was going to give us a word and we were going to write it. So the way I prepared the night before was I would take out a piece of clean loose leaf paper, and instead of numbering it on the left side, I would number it on the right side and write all my spelling words out. And then I'd trace over them to make them a little bit darker. And then I'd put that paper back in the pack. So the next day at school, when the teacher would say, all right, pull out a
Wow.
paper. I know, it's so embarrassing, but
No, I'm actually impressed.
Yeah.
You're like a human mimeograph machine.
Well, I would pull out 2 pieces of paper instead of 1, but I would make sure they stay all lined up, and I'd set it on my page.
We never knew.
And the blank paper was on top. So anytime the teacher came by, just looked like a blank piece of paper sitting on my desk. But anytime she said a word, all I had to do was push down, and I could see all the words spelled on the right side. So I just copy them over to the left side. I am, to this day, the world's worst speller. I think spell check is amazing. So I'm not promoting this as a way
Yeah, she is.
doing that. But what I could do is think through ways of maybe not honorably getting good grades. And although I got my A on my spelling test, what I quickly ran into is I got the A on the spelling test, but then the next thing would come through and it would require a nice shiny project or homework to be completed. And once again, my home life was, I went home to 4 siblings, 2 which were 10 years younger than me. And this is in 4th and 5th grade, no parents at home. And so I got them home. I helped them get baths. I helped them do their homework. I had a lot of responsibilities. I made dinner. Sometimes it was literally pulling out frozen peas from the freezer and trying to warm them underwater so that everybody could eat something. And so I didn't get my homework done, and there weren't nice and shiny objects that I could use to make a creative project from home. So when I'd go back to school the next day, even though I had trumped the memorization, I still couldn't get past that. And so I think I carried along with me for a long time that I just could not be a smart kid. Like, I was not a smart kid. I didn't have those memorization tools, and I didn't have the shiny objects, and I didn't have the time to complete things outside of school. So it kind of like took me many years, like, to get into adulthood. Now, as an adult, I realized that memorizing has nothing to do with how smart I was. And maybe a little kudos to myself for figuring out a very creative way to get the A over just sitting and memorizing to forget the next day the words anyway. And so I think knowing that intelligence comes in all kinds of forms and shapes, and that we can't just focus on that memorization of it, and that the work that Peter Liljedahl has done to lead us in that direction of really looking at mastery from students, and not like, the best way I can describe it, and I've said this a couple of times, is a Yelp review. I feel like as a child, I got a Yelp review. I wasn't shiny enough. I wasn't quick enough. I didn't smile pretty enough when you requested it. And so my grades showed it. But none of those things really impact my abilities or my skills or what I was capable of. And so I think a lot of his work helps us take that Yelp review out of grading and lead it into a meaningful assessment of where we're at now, so that we can see where we need to go next, and not including those failures. And so from the heart of my third, fourth grade self, like I'm just completely in on his work. And I think it's what our kids deserve.
Love it.
Tim, I don't know how you're going to follow that.
I don't worry. I memorized something to say now. Well, it's funny. It's funny because like Melissa and I are very much opposites. Like going through school, I was the memorizer. Like I memorized how to, like, spelling was the only thing in English that actually made sense to me. Like, but in English, I struggled as a kid. Math, I was always like flying colors. Like math just made sense to me, even though I had some of the crappiest teachers. Like math always just clicked, you know. But I know that it's not like that. It's not like that for every student. So, you know, I did what I did to get by, but I got through school. Sure, I made honor roll, high honors, whatever like that. But I was a mimicker. Peter describes mimicking, right? I could see it like a robot and mimic it every single time. And I memorized procedure. In math, I got concept, but in every other subject, I was just mimicking procedures, you know? So what learning has truly taken place? Not much. And as far as my math story goes, I started teaching, you know, I student taught fall of '01, started teaching spring of '02, and ever since then. And my math story really has been, I've always loved trying to just make learning student centered as much as possible from year one, like make it active. I mean, I get bored with lectures. I hate lectures, you know, just personally. I was a kid who couldn't sit still in a classroom. And so it's like, I want it to be fun. I want it to be engaging, because if I'm not engaged with my ADHD brain, I'm not going to pay attention. So throughout all of my first couple of years of teaching, my math story was, I don't know why, but it's just like, I always found myself making waves and not even trying to. I was not trying to tick people off. I was not trying to whatever, but it's just like, you know, like when things would go, it's like I'd always push the boundaries, like have kids go outside. Let's, like, I even had kids like write on windows before, no, you can't do that. Like, come on, really? Like, why not? I could erase it, you know, but now it's like a normal thing. But I was doing sort of that back then, but I was always like, you know, I would always tick off administrators who had that rigid, tight control mentality. And it's just like, we never got along. And because I want what's in the best interest for my kids. I don't work in a school building to make adults happy. I do what's best for my students. That's what's always driven my heart in all this from that point on. And then in 2015, when I stumbled upon a new app called GeoGebra, I had no idea that it would take me where I am today. I'm grateful it did, but it's just like, I just love this. My math story is, I love finding anything and everything that could make learning fun, students there, and engaging. And that's what I strive to do today. And then starting with BTC about a year ago, reading Peter's work, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Like I was doing so much stuff there, but just reformatting a lot of what I've been doing to fit like a thinking classroom model. It's just like, it's been a game changer. It really is. And I love the school where I'm at now in New Haven. I love New Haven, Connecticut. I love everything about teaching there. They're so progressive. You want to try new things, they encourage it. And so I wish I got here a lot sooner. So
Great.
Well, we touched briefly on our key idea or discussion for today's topic. So in thinking about grading, and Molly and I were talking about this earlier, we feel like this is probably one of the more difficult elements for
And controversial.
right for teachers and for administrators to wrap their heads around within the building thinking classroom idea. And so can you all talk to us a little bit about your thinking around how we really grade and make that manageable for teachers?
Yeah, I'm gonna start out with like one, just thankful for Tim. Tim and I met in Maine, and I went to his presentation, and like what he was doing was just incredible. And so I asked him, hey, can I jump in this with you? And thankfully he was willing, and we've had great collaborations since then. And working on the project, I think my favorite thing about this project is that as we put it out there, the conversations that are started, like, well, you know, how does this relate to that, and what comes from this, and you know, the restrictions that are in place in schools and things like that. In all those conversations, though, I think what's interesting is no matter whether I'm talking to parents, teachers, or students, like when you have those honest conversations, almost all of them will tell you, yeah, the grades, there's something wrong with the grades. Like the grade doesn't match. It's not, it's not a real reflection. And so then like,
but also in that same sense, people won't let it go.
Right.
Yeah, because it's
You're
right.
only thing they know. It's the only thing they understand. It's the only thing they were ever measured by.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell teachers, what if your doctors were like that? You would stop seeing them. They'd be out of patience. But why is it in education that it keeps going? It's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's like there's so many people that don't want to change. You know what? The only constant in this life is change.
Change is so hard, and with a system as big as education, like it's hard. It's not an easy task, but I think it's a good sign that most people in general, if they're being honest, realize that it's a change that needs to be made. But a lot of them are just like, I don't know how to start this. Like, it's just me, and this is a great big institution, and where do we go? But I think just having those conversations, like people talking about it, like we need to talk through grades, and Peter does a good job of talking through, like, what do you really believe about grades? Like, what is it that truly assessing? What do you want it to be, and what is it, and how do we find those differences? And I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think it's very encouraging. The conversations are increasing, and we're talking about it, and I think that's the best thing. In the middle there, it's going to be messy because there are so many little things that just need to be worked out, and people need to have the opportunity to come together to get those same values, that same vision of what grading is, and even to be able to separate what we call grading and assessment. Because ideally we would all say, oh, grades show you, you know, what the assessment is, but when you get down to it, are your grades really showing you the same thing as your assessment? When you assess a kid, I don't know how many teachers tell me, like, oh, I know this kid can do it. This kid has shown me 5 and 6 times, but when I put the paper in front of him, he gets it wrong. Okay, well, you know that kid can do it. That's your assessment, but you're going to grade him on the one time he can't get it right. Like, there's
the one event.
Yeah.
And that's what,
would you mind, one of you, maybe just giving a little bit of the philosophy that's in chapter 14 on assessment, as far as the research has shown for building thinking classrooms?
Tim, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, no problem.
You, Tim.
Let me. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I want to share when Melissa and I present. This is one of the slides that we like to present to teachers. Can you see that? Okay.
Hold on, just
right there.
There we go.
We love to show teachers this right here, the end of year dilemma, right? Let's say you're teaching in a district where 70% is required for a student to pass. And every teacher watching this has had something. If you've been teaching long enough, if you've been teaching for at least a year, you've had something like this. You have 2 students, say Ben versus Abigail. One student, the one on the left, he's, for example, 3 absences. It's a hard worker. He participates, great behavior. But then you have another, the girl over there on the right, she's out a lot. And she has 40% of her assignments not even done. And she's a good kid, but a lot of times she's just not actively engaged. And so Melissa and I have talked to audiences of hundreds of teachers, and we asked them, what grade would you put in Power School? And it's and it's always, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually about half and half. Half of them would say Ben should be bumped to a 70, and the other half are saying Ben should keep it a 69, right? Well, what he earned is what he earned. But then in Abigail, it's like teachers can't even agree on this. What's truly objective about this? A student's grade is not objective at all, especially when we grade events, right? And so Peter talks about something, instead of grading events, like basically chapter 14, a Cliff's Notes version, is like, instead of grading events, right, we want to grade what we call outcomes. And one of the things I love, again, we want grades to be objective, right? And the way that he describes it in BTC is shown on the screen right here. Expressing or dealing with facts or conditions as perceived, without distortion. When teachers go back here, there's a lot of distortion. There's a lot of non-objectivity going on, right? Because your opinions in there. Oh, what do I grade? Do I give them, right? But no personal feelings are involved. How do we grade students without a teacher's personal bias and feelings? Because it's like, we've had some teachers in our workshops say, well, you know what? They don't show up. They don't take notes. Nope, they should go down. And the other teachers are like, you're out of your mind. At least the student, like some teachers will go here and say, Abigail can miss that much class and still get almost a 70. Heck, I should bump her to a 70, but Ben should be at the 16. Like, man, we have had teachers, we just present this, they could talk for hours, And so,
interesting perspectives on that.
Yeah. My favorite analogy, my favorite example Peter has in 14, this is like my favorite picture in the whole book right here. You're going to go skydiving, just really quickly here. You're going to go skydiving in 3 weeks, and you get to choose who packs your parachute. You have Abigail, Ben, or Charlie. And we love to ask teachers in our workshops, who would you choose? Who would you choose to pack your parachute? Take a minute, talk about it, right? Well, let me ask you two. Who would you pick?
I mean, Abigail is the absolute safest. So
yeah,
I think
it's your life.
Having a rough time.
Yep.
And Charlie's all over the place. So if he's having a good day,
good days, bad days.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here for a second. Say this.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is exactly what I was talking about. Like when you look at this, you can do an obvious assessment that Abigail has got this. Abigail's the one you want doing your backpack. But when you switch this to grades, all of those come out to be 50%. Like they're all the same percentage. So Abigail's going to fail just as much as Ben, just as much as Charlie. But we can assess that and see that Abigail is the one that's got it. So we need to fix that disconnect between that assessment and the grades.
Right. And that's what Peter talks about, events-based grading versus outcomes-based grading. We want to be able to grade students' outcomes. If a student can show that they can effectively use the Pythagorean theorem, for example, like to solve for a side of a right triangle, and they can do that repeatedly, consecutively, without any intervention whatsoever, yeah, they may mess it up. They may struggle on a quiz. They bombed it. Like, I think the example Peter uses, let's suppose Abigail down here struggles to add fractions with like denominators, but yet by the end of the week, she's adding like fractions with unlike denominators. So the teacher over here gives a quiz. All the denominators are like, she fails it, but then she passes this quiz with flying colors. Well, why is the teacher counting this bad event here? The fact that she could do harder questions, right? It's almost like we love saying Abigail, Ben, and Charlie have all earned the same grade here. Yeah. In the way that the grading currently is in our education system. But that grade doesn't show us much. I mean, clearly we want Abigail to do it. And Charlie's like the kid that, in a situation where kids have divorced parents, when they go to one parent's house, they do very well. Then they're at the other parent's house. Oh my gosh, it's rocky. It's crazy. We've all had students like that, but again, if we really want grades to truly reflect what students know, Peter writes in his research that we really need to be grading. No, we really should not be grading events anymore. We need to be grading outcomes, and students have lots of opportunities in class to demonstrate outcomes or demonstrate mastery of objectives individually.
So both of you have mentioned events, and I think Peter makes this very clear in the book, but I'm not sure that would be clear to anyone who has not read the book. Can you just kind of give a little bit of an explanation on what an event might be.
Go ahead, Melissa.
So an event traditionally is your quiz, your test, your project that's due on this date. And when the teacher assesses it and then grades it, what's included in the grade is not only what they got right, but also the failures. So Abigail's doing well, but she's still going to receive a lower grade, not because she doesn't know it. She's proven she does, but because she failed it at the beginning. But since it happened on that event, that test, that quiz, the failures get included in the successes, is kind of like averaging it out. And then you can change it because now tomorrow that event's over. And so you can't change what they did on that event. So going more towards what Tim's going to explain to you is getting away from events and more towards opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
And I think, when we consider, we often speak out of both sides of our mouth in math class, like where we'll have this think about a growth mindset and it's okay. And we value mistakes and our mistakes help us learn. And we say all of these platitudes, but when it comes down to it, what we're actually valuing are the things that we put grades on. And we're not valuing that you made a mistake and learned from it. We're valuing that mistake that we're marking wrong and then providing a grade for it. We're not, I'll have instances where teachers will say, well, I'm not giving them full credit for the retake or for fixing this and I'm like,
why?
Can we unpack that some?
Well, and my favorite is, okay, so you got a 69% today, but you can come back tomorrow and do the retake. What?
Right.
If I got 69% today, what is going to be different about tomorrow or even a week from now? What's going to happen between there? And that happening isn't, that learning can only occur if the teacher is teaching. And so if you're not giving yourself time to work with the student and find out where their misunderstandings are, why give them a retake? It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
Right. And so what Peter, so in the rubric that he proposes in chapter 14, we're no longer grading events, quiz 1, test 1, project 1, homework 1. We don't grade separate events, points in time anymore. We're grading students' mastery, students' ability to demonstrate knowledge individually of various objectives. Here's an example from algebra, 3 of them from algebra, right? Right here. I can ask questions on all these topics, right? Solve a one-step equation algebraically. Most likely, right? There's 3 attainment levels. I could ask questions at different types. You see if you look right there. Now, I'm probably not going to ask an intermediate or advanced question for the first objective because that's not really possible in most cases, right? But, what Peter proposes here is the way that students earn mastery here in a nutshell is if they can answer 2 questions correctly in a row. They have to be consecutive, right? Occurring on the same day, right? If they can answer 2 questions, if they can, for this objective right here, solve a 2-step equation algebraically. If the students can solve 2 of these on their own, correctly, consecutively, then the student has earned basic credit in that category. And if they can solve harder ones 2 in a row, then they'll get intermediate. So, and this is also what we call backwards compatible, meaning that, again, scores based on consistent attainment. So right here, right, in a nutshell, right, the way that we actually work on this. I don't want to rush it too much because I know there's so much to unpack here, but we collect a lot of data. If we want to be objective and not subjective, we have to collect data. And we could show when students demonstrate knowledge individually or when they say made a mistake or got help, whatever, if that makes sense. So my grade book looks like this, if that makes sense. So this is Abigail, right? And really quickly here, again, look at the left side. Mastery at any level consists of students demonstrating knowledge individually 2 times in a row. So if you look at Abigail for this first objective here, she did it correctly, made a silly mistake, did it correctly. Does she earn basic? Does she get credit here?
Yes.
Yeah, because she got exactly. So that's a 2 out of 2 so far. Right?
Hey, Tim,
So look,
one thing,
yeah.
One thing that I maybe want to clarify a bit is the mastery of 2 consecutive doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in the same day. So like maybe today the student is working on it and I can see that they've got it. So I'm going to give them the check. Tomorrow they're working on the same type of skill and they kind of missed it. So I might give them a different marking, but then the next day they get it, I give them a check. They still haven't mastered it yet because they need 2 checks in a row, but that might be over more than a day.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Again, and students, again, with differentiation, not every student's at the same place at the same time, right? And so in any class I have in New Haven, it's like I'll have kids like who are like, I am like, they're at the advanced questions already, while some of them are still trying to attain basic level mastery, if that makes sense. But like say right here, right, this student is struggling with intermediate level questions of this for this objective, but hey, you know what? They at least demonstrated mastery at the basic level, so that's why we have a 2 out of 3. You see what I mean? So again, these checks could come from a quiz. They could come from a conversation with me as a teacher, and they verbally show that they know what's going on. There are many sources of evidence that you could use to put data in your rubric here. It's not only limited to test, quiz, if that makes sense. And remember, yeah.
I was going to say, and one of the great connections between this data collection as an assessment, like you're assessing what's going on with the students, you're assessing their mastery and moving it into a grade is, like if you notice on the screen, there might be an X. So if a student has an X, it just means they haven't mastered it yet. It's not counting it against them. It's just
correct.
An assessment. We're looking for those 2 checks. When they achieve the 2 checks, they get the points. They don't lose the points once they get an X. So it's connect that assessment and grading and make them a little bit more meaningful.
For me, this even just looking at what you're presenting here is something that shows growth and gives a really, I mean, if you understand, I mean, it's a fairly complicated not grading, that's not what I mean, assessment tool right here. But if you understand what all those things mean, you really can see what the growth is.
Totally.
And that is the actual definition of learning, right? Because our system has been set up with grades for so long, it has skewed the view of what learning actually is. And I feel like we've been fighting, particularly in math, and I don't know, maybe other subjects, but for this type of assessment for so many years, because standards-based is not new. I mean, standards-based assessment started coming in my very early years of teaching, and I've been around for a while. So teachers didn't know how to do that. This is one answer to that question that is coming just.
Yeah. Another,
in my opinion, Peter needed to be around like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is the research really the research has been around for a long time, but just the way that he's made it implementable is incredible.
Yep.
But I lost my thought. You were saying something.
That's right. There's 4 of us here. No worries.
But the one thing I want, if you don't mind, just really quick adding is the fact that this rubric is backwards compatible. If you look at that last row down there, right? Abigail struggled in the basic category. I mean, she maybe not struggled. She had a conversation with the teacher. That's what check sub C means, right? And showed mastery that way. Then she worked in a group setting, and working in a group again is not knowledge demonstrated individually. So I think
that's what the G stands for.
Correct.
Yep.
And so, and in the intermediate, nothing, silly mistake, group, maybe got it wrong. But look at the advanced level. It just clicked. Remember the Abigail, the graph was like this, and all of a sudden went up, and then it went up. well, this is like going up. You know what? Why should she? Because she was able to demonstrate knowledge individually twice in a row at the advanced level. Guess what? Her score in that category was a 4 out of 4. So therefore, in the teacher grade book, I would put like an 8 out of 9.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And then
Now,
that gets translated into a grade, right? So the 8 out of
Correct.
9 is now a decent actual percentage grade that everyone's used to, everyone knows how to understand. That goes in the grade book.
Correct. What I do in my school in New Haven is I for any unit that I have, I'll have like maybe 10 or 15 objectives, and it takes a while to fill it up as I'm teaching, my kids are learning. But on any given day, so like when the unit is, what I do is I basically keep a grade in Power School, because I have Power School, and Power School, it's events. You got to put in this column, that column. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a digital version of a teacher grade book from 1950. It's the same thing, right? Power School, but it's all about events. I know they have standards based, but I haven't explored it that much enough yet. But right here, what I often do is I make the biggest grade for the quarter. Like if my denominator, that 9, if my denominator for, I think, was like a 54 for one of my classes when everything all said and done. So what I did is I doubled that to 108. And I took the numerator of every kid's score and I just doubled it. So that way a grade of, say, 100 out of 108 or 96 out of 108, right? That had the most weight for quarter 2, as I'm finishing up quarter 2 grades right now, if that makes sense.
So Molly, I remembered what I was going to say, because you were commenting on standards-based grading, and standards-based grading has been around for a long time. And yes, we are using standards as the base for the grading, but I would get a lot of pushback in that, our district did standards-based grading and it was just a mess, and it's true. They're not, but
it's rarely implemented well.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, is your implementation, because a lot of them, like, we've talked about how this is removing the failures and letting you focus on their mastery, where a lot of standards-based grading, when it was put out there with not a lot of direction on how to implement it, we were just breaking our quizzes down into standard by standard, but we were still counting failures. We weren't looking at successes or the spots that kids need. Move on from, whereas this actually allows you, the student, and through the platform that Tim and I and others have worked together to provide, it allows the parents to see exactly where the student is having success and where they need support. It lets the student know, like chapter 13, all about that navigation tool, and this gives the students the navigation tool too. And so yes, this is grading based on standards, but I would caution someone from turning away from it just because they've implemented standards-based grading before. Like Peter has a lot of key elements that just like the instructional pieces that come in the other practices, there's a lot of key elements in chapters 13 and 14 that make this doable and implementable like it wasn't before.
I agree. And I think part like my view of having watched standards-based grading happening in schools is that it's much easier to do at the elementary school, and they're much more willing to try it. However, parents don't like it because they don't understand it. It's not how they were graded. It's not how they translate success because they're used to grades. And I think that because of that, it's definitely harder, in my opinion, for secondary, middle school, and high school to implement a successful standard-based grading system for so many reasons. And one of them is obviously, like Tim is talking about, his Power School, right? Like just having to use that, which in many, many ways makes your life very easy, right? But then to do this, it makes it you have a lot of questions and how do I do this? And it needs to be worked out as a group. You can't just say, okay, this is what we're doing. Here you go. And then everybody figure it out. No, you have to all work on this together and learn it together so that there's consistency throughout your school. And I never see that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's the same thing we talked about 20 minutes ago. People are resistant to change, teachers especially. And it's like, again, other professions that you go to, change is just the common norm. Like, you know, in education, again, everywhere, the only constant in this life is change. And yes, I get it. The fact that teachers complain all the time. They complain to me. They say, Tim, you know what? This TikTok brain generation, they staying up late and they can't, like, you know, we used to have to like recite and memorize and do this. And I'm thinking, yeah. And they can't remember this. They have to like, okay, I see you're frustrated. But it's like, but if you go back to when we were in school, you know, it's like, you know, me memorizing everything, was that really a best use of my brain when I was in high school? Definitely not, you know? And so it's just like, and Melissa had to play the system and cheat. So it's like, I mean, could there have been ways to better, but it's like, could there have been better ways to engage us as learners, as kids? Yes, I just think that the teachers didn't really, they may not have known how, or there hadn't been enough research to point to that direction yet. That's all. And like, they did the best that they could.
And we're living in another time.
Right.
It's not the same, right? I mean, when cars first became available to purchase, if you didn't know how to fix your car, you may as well not have one. I don't know how to fix anything in my car. I can barely even change the time. So I don't need to know that anymore, right? Like, it's just unrealistic. So we have to go with the time. And I think that it's hard because time is moving very quickly, and, you know, not to give all those complaining teachers and parents excuses, but, you know, it is hard to change. And this, I mean, I love this idea. I think it's amazing. But because I do educational consulting and I can see how this needs to be systemic, and I see that it's a very big learning curve for some teachers and maybe not so much for others, I think this is one of the harder sells in terms, not because the philosophy is not there, not because there's not a how-to, not for any other reason than it's just a big change.
We got to have those conversations. We got to start talking about it, and
that requires time.
It does. And it's impossible.
Willingness.
You're absolutely right. It's totally impossible for, like, if you read BTC within a month, say, and you read the book and you're like, yes, I'm going to go jump and, you know, take a dive in the deep end of this BTC swimming pool. You're not going to be able to implement all 14 practices within the first 2 months. It's impossible. And I believe there's a reason why Peter wrote, again, I can't speak for him, but, you know, he wrote the grading and assessment chapters last, and it makes logical sense because we talk about the non-curricular, non-routine tasks, and the non-vertical permanent surface, not non-vertical, you know what I mean, the NVPS or whatever, and you talk about thin slicing, discoveries, like all that stuff. You know, pedagogy needs to change first, and once pedagogy changes, then the grading comes like after the fact, if that makes sense.
Well, you start to see the need for it, right? Like your pedagogy has changed, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, now this is not working for me. I need to figure out something else. And so when that comes, then here's your answer. I have found that reading it chapter by chapter or a group of them at a time is much more digestible than reading the whole thing and trying to do the whole thing. I think, you know, it's how I learn. It's probably how a lot of people learn. I'm not that unique, I don't think. But
at my school, our math department, when I transferred in New Haven, I transferred to the school I'm at now, which I love. I love ESUM's my school. But the department had Will McKinney, who helped me build version 1.0 of the BTC automated grading rubric that Melissa joined on and, you know, made 2.0 and 3.0 a million times better. But Will McKinney's like, oh yeah, we're doing a BTC study. I'm like, yeah, I thought I hit the jackpot, but we literally took a whole year to read the book. We come in for 2 weeks, we read chapter 1. Let's talk, digest, how are we going to do this? And then we read chapter 2 for another month. Then we took time off, and then we observed each other teach and gave each other feedback. You know, and then
it's a great process.
Like, it was like I've never been in a school like this. It's just unbelievable. I feel spoiled to be where I am, but I'm grateful. And I wish every teacher had a learning environment like that, because my heart goes out to the teachers who want to do something like this, but they meet resistance, they meet pressure from those veteran teachers that don't have tight iron fists and they don't want to change. But yeah.
Could you share with us? I think you just mentioned that you have a rubric. Are you going to share that with us?
Yeah, it's if you want to put the URL up there, I think you have it there.
I do.
Actually, I have it right here if you want.
That's all right. I've got it.
Okay, but it's tinyurl.com/BTC rubric. All right, for teachers that are watching that are really interested, they've read. It's not gonna be useful unless you've read chapters like 12 through 14 of Peter's book. So we encourage you, before you even attempt it, you got to read the book. That's imperative. And so, but once you read through chapters 12 to 14, especially the way he describes grading in chapter 14, the last one, it just makes sense. So what, at the beginning of the year this year, I was looking at that and I'm like, I love what he's proposing here, but I can't use paper because it would just be too messy, and I'd have to do too much number crunching in my head. I mean, Google Sheets should be able to automate that. So I started playing around in Google Sheets. That's kind of the story behind it. And my colleagues, William McKinney and Brandon all came alongside and, helped me out. William with the formatting and stuff like that, made it look really nice. And Brandon helped me with the original formula to calculate the grade over there. It was pretty complicated with a lot of ands and ors, looking for 2 consecutive checks in a row to determine mastery. But the URL is right there. And if you go there, you will find basically a step-by-step guide to show you how this actually works. And so I know it's 7:48, but do you want me to show quickly, or?
Yeah, it would be great for us to see it quickly. I know that this is a long one, but if people don't want to watch the whole thing, then
in one sitting they can
watch it in bites, or they can do whatever they want.
So right here, if I go to that tiny URL that I showed you, you have three things in there. The grading rubric is the one in the middle.
We can't see that. Maybe we need to reshare.
Oh, I need to share my entire screen. I apologize. Yes, let me do that. All right, go back. I'll share it quickly. Share screen, and let's see if this works. I'm sorry, it's messy. Can you see my messy desktop right there?
Yeah, you got a lot going on there.
It's too much. All right. So now you can see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that tiny URL, you'll see 3 items. The actual grading rubric is the one in the middle. Here, basically, the first one is just PDFs of just you could just print them. You know what I mean? Sometimes I actually have a paper copy. I just like to jot quick notes down as I'm walking around the room. But this is what it looks like, right? You got a paper version you could print up, 1 or even 2 right here for those teachers that want to gather more data on a single sheet. It's there if you want it. But right here, this is where the rubric is. It's the Google Sheet in the middle. Okay, so we'll go there. And when you don't own anything, you can't edit this. It's not editable because you're not logged in as Melissa or me. Yeah. So what you do is you go to make a copy. I can't tell you how many requests I've had to get access. I'm like, no, just go to file, make a copy. Right? People still do that.
I think that's like not a universal thing of knowledge. I don't think.
Yeah. So you make a copy, and I'm just going to call it Math for All Demo. All right, we'll make a copy here, and this won't take too long right here. And while I'm at it, let me actually go to Sheets.
I hope he gives us a check on this Math for All. I mean,
I don't know.
We're under a lot of pressure right now.
I know. Hang on a second. Copy to copy from. There it is. Remember, Melissa, we had this thing here. All right. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna actually put. How do you spell your last name?
Vokey.
And Molly, right?
Yeah.
And what was your other name? I'm sorry, I forgot.
SAB.
NANI. And Heidi H.
Okay. So basically, this is what we're going to have right here. We're going to have a bunch of students in our class. We'll have a class of 8. Okay. So right now, what we're going to do in this rubric right here, I'm going to actually populate my class list right here. So I'm actually going to, I do this once a year. So let me make this bigger. I'm just going to type in the names at the beginning of the year, semester, always putting in a few extras. I have to put in extras. And we'll get to that later, but there we go. And there we have it. Okay, and so now, here we have unit details page. Now I actually have to type in some objectives. And so I'm just going to copy paste quickly. Whoops. Sorry. Unit details, I copied that. All right, under unit details, I'm going to call this coordinate geometry. And right here, I just have 3 objectives that I'm just going to copy and paste. 1 second. Right here. And there we go. And so right here, and notice here the automatic numbering there, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. You could type up to 15 objectives in here. All right. And so now I have to determine the highest level of attainment at which the student can earn. Am I only going to ask basic level questions? Or will I do intermediate? You as a teacher have to decide that, right? And so identifying slope. Yeah.
Filling out that navigation tool ahead of time that Peter talks about in chapter 13 will slide right into this.
Oh, totally. So I'm just going to make it basic. Some teachers do intermediate, whatever, but just for illustration's sake here. All right. Why is it? Oh, come on. It's frozen on here now. Shoot. Oh no.
That's all right. I feel like if it's frozen, I feel like we are getting a good.
No, I got it.
Okay, Vera.
So right here, so we can make this one now at intermediate. So build lines with a given slope. I can think of harder level questions I could ask, and solving problems on parallel lines. I mean, yeah, we could ask. See right there, and look at our master template right here. Notice here that in the grade book, right? Remember on the Google Slides presentation, we had it right there, but there's anything that's grayed out stays grayed out. But now I can start putting in grades for students. So what I'm going to do now? Well, first, what we need to do. One thing I forgot, Melissa, is this. And again, it's best if you just go through these things because when you go through it too fast, you tend to lose it. But Peter uses 2, 3, 4 as the grades for intermediate, basic, and advanced. But so Peter's original intent was to make the basic score the minimum passing grade for the course. And where he's from Canada, it's 50%. But where I teach in New Haven, we need a 60%. So I use 60. And when you look at that, the 2, 3, 4 changes to 3, 4, 5 because a 3 out of 5 is 60%. Right? And some teachers are like, well, God, if you teach at a rigorous school where you need a 75 to pass, right? Well, isn't that technically 6 out of 8 is minimum? You see what I mean? So you could change this and make it to what it suits your needs for your school. I use 60 as my number when I'm teaching in New Haven. Okay. So right here, the cool part is like, wouldn't it be so nice if we can make one of these for every kid in our class? And the answer is yes, you can. What we do here is go to the BTC menu up here. And basically, you only want to do this once a year. You create your student tabs right here. Watch how nice this is. You create your student tabs. It needs permission to run. So I have to give it permission because it's not an official Google add-on, but it's safe, I promise you. You run it. Now watch this. Watch the magic happen right here. Like this. Check this out. We go here. This was my dream. And I was like, oh, thank you.
It's just my dream.
It was my dream. But look, watch this. Watch the bottom now. If you look at the bottom here, there are tabs being created right here automatically. One for Brandon, one for William, one for Melissa, one for me. It's just a little slow here. Peter, and I think we added you two to the class, right? Molly and Heidi, right? And then we had the extra students. I always say leave extras because if you have a kid move to town, you want to, you know what I mean? You just want a few extras always in there, always in the mix. And so now, guess what? We could start having, we'll go to the Molly tab. We're going to have Molly start earning grades here. Molly's working. And then all of a sudden, let's say, look at all this. Look at all, again, each of these symbols has a meaning. And you could see what they mean if you look at the key on the right. All of the check types, knowledge demonstrate individually through observation, conversation, or maybe a silly mistake that didn't detract from the objective. I don't have time to get into what that means right now. But any check type will go towards mastery of the objective. I got help. I work in a group, made a mistake. The teacher observed the student making a mistake, had a conversation. Kid clearly doesn't know what's going on. Partially correct, partially correct, and then not attempted. So if you look here, we could have you earn a check, right? That's the 1 out of 2. See how the highest is a 2 because there's no intermediate. But now once you get 2 consecutive checks in a row, whatever you work, you got help. But if you demonstrate 2 checks in a row, that 1 out of 2 changes to a 2 out of 2.
So can I tell you the best part about this? You obviously have other best parts, but this is going to be so silly. I don't want to figure out how to do all of those checks and a check 0 and a check H and all of those ones or check G, whatever it is. I don't want to have to figure out how to do that on the computer. So the fact that that's already there and ready for me to just choose is amazing.
Oh, it's so, and I a lot of days I'll walk around the classroom as my kids are working individually and like trying to show that they can demonstrate knowledge of the objectives. I'll have my iPad or computer in hand. I'm just quickly going to tab. Oh yeah. Oh cool. Check. Oh, he asked me for help. I record the data as I go. You know,
awesome.
And it was an adjustment because I'm fully immersed in this. I am swimming laps in the deep end with this every day, or not every day, but most days. But sometimes I'll collect student work, and in my planning period, I'll quickly go through it. Outcomes. Okay, yeah, check X. Oh, I remember he asked me for help on that one. Sometimes I'll write an H next to a kid's name in pen, or next to a problem, so that I remember. Oh, I got to put an H for that one in my gradebook later. But look at this here. Say Molly totally struggled with this subject. Totally struggled at the basic level. Asked for help here, but then the next day things click. Look at this. Who cares if it's a 1 out of 4? Look at this. 2 checks in a row. It's automatically a 4 out of 4 now.
Love it.
And this is like them providing you. So, I think one of the things that people think about is like, oh, well, how do I keep track of like when this will take care of that for you? And so it allows you to collect the data in real time and provide student feedback in a way that is meaningful, right? Like, and it can show you when you've made that connection to new learning. So I think that's just really
one thing also that I want to illustrate that Peter talks about
there.
and Tim also just talked about is like teachers could potentially think, oh, this is going to take so much more time, but in the way that he was just talking about it, he actually is kind of developing his grade, so to speak, his assessment and his grade as he's teaching. So the time is actually going to be potentially less once you're over your learning curve.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it in real time. And it's not all going to be done in real time, but also the grading on your assessments will eventually be much less too, because what you need is what kids are going, like a kid's not going to take an entire test if you've already assessed that they have mastered a particular topic. They'll only take a part of the test.
They're going to focus on showing you what they need.
Which is a totally big shift and different idea around assessment and grading that is revolutionary in my opinion.
Well, we could definitely continue.
I know we can't do this. Like Tim is already being called by little people probably. So how can we learn more about you? How can our listeners come and join on your train?
Well, I would
want me to share that screen with the QR codes?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let me share this. I can, if you have your phone nearby, if you watch on a computer, you do that, or you can see the QR codes are right there.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend connecting with Tim and myself on social media. Tim just recently posted a list of opportunities where we're going to be collaborating in different platforms, and we'd love for people to join us and have those conversations that are moving grading forward. And so I know I'm also very, very excited for the second BTC National Conference coming up in Arizona on July 1st and 2nd. And so I'm really excited to reconnect with people all along the way. But once again, getting that whole environment of people from everywhere, just all focused on doing what's best for students and getting them thinking and doing our part in encouraging that in students. Like I just can't wait to get back there. So BTC Arizona 24, July 1st.
And you're also doing Indiana, aren't you? February 18th, you're speaking there. You're doing this workshop on February 18th in Indiana.
That's what I'm saying. There's lots of ways to connect ahead of that. I'm doing Indiana. I know we're both looking at presenting at Georgia and the Texas. Is it CAMT? Tim?
Yeah, CAM. We'll be doing this workshop at CAMT in Texas, and individually, I'll be doing it at Atomic in Connecticut, May 25th, with William McKinney, my colleague, and also I'll be at the Massachusetts one, March 14th, and Vermont in it's April 10th or something like that. So the New England states we got covered, but we'll be out there, and we can do virtual PD sessions too, because we do stuff like that. I do stuff like this, so work with districts outside of my New Haven contract hours. So be happy to just feel free to reach out.
Yeah. So however it's most convenient for you to connect with us, like we love the questions. That's really kind of what's made the rubric better. And what it is, we'll present it and then someone will say, oh my gosh, this is really good. But, and, taking that but and having that conversation is where we grow. And so, and hearing the struggles that you're having on, that big wheel of change and moving it forward. If we keep having those conversations, it does make a difference. It seems slow, but that's what moves the wheel.
Well, we are so excited for this rubric and for this conversation, and that it's spreading, and we will also be at Atomic, so perhaps we will see you there.
Will and I will be there presenting. Yep, we'll be there.
Excellent.
Yeah, we are too. One of the days. It's one day. Yes, we are.
It's one day.
Same.
So thank you both so much for being here with us. We really appreciate your time and your expertise, and look forward to seeing you in person again.
Same. It was great connecting with you, Molly and Heidi.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Wow. That was a lot and was amazing. So, such good stuff.
Actual implementation, and which is, the hardest part. And when we've talked about that is, the first couple of practices is like, oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. But this is like the end, right? Like you've done so much learning by the time you've gotten to this point that you're at the end. So, all right. People are sick of us, I think. So let's get to it.
Yeah.
Yes. Our next guest is our friend Amy Chang, and we're super excited to talk to her. She, I forgot even what her topic is. Heidi.
Yeah. So she is they are going to be talking about,
that's all right.
My word.
That's all right.
Fantastic. And I wrote it down and now I'm not going to remember. But
Amy's
they're coming
here with us February 8th.
On February 8th. And we are so excited for that. And data conversations. And so thinking about that and how we really use those to further student learning. So we are really excited to have a conversation with Amy. And so we hope you will join us in our conversation with them on the 8th.
Yes. And until then, we hope that you are keeping math creative, curious, and inclusive. Bye, everyone.
See ya.